Hey there YouTube, Mountain Boy here, bringing you today my review of the SOG Tellus. And I have to admit, this has been kind of a fun one to play with and to work with. I have to admit, I have some really kind of mixed opinions on it. First of all, it's 4.2 inches blade length. The overall length is 9 inches. It's a full tang. I measured it at the thickest part at just a hair under 4 millimeters. That kind of goes down to about 2 millimeters. It's made out of 440C stainless steel, and SOG claims it has a hardness of 58 to 60. It's a drop point blade style, flat grind with a stone wash finish. The handle scales are basically like kind of a fiberglass reinforced plastic that feel pretty good in hand. The overall weight is 6.7 ounces, although I have to admit I'm not sure if that's the blade or if that's the blade and the sheath. And it is made in China. So I think this knife has kind of garnered a lot of attention in the knife community and in the bushcrafter world. A lot of people have been looking at this as a budget bushcrafter knife, and you see it kind of in a number of reviews and a number of websites kind of advertises that. Interestingly enough, SOG doesn't say that at all. In their literature, they just describe it as pretty much a strong outdoor knife. And that's really what it is. It's kind of a beast of a knife in terms of how thick and how heavy, especially at kind of at the price point. And this comes in at MSRP at $60, and street price, I'm actually seeing it at $60. So the knife itself, you can kind of see the ergos on it. It has kind of a very kind of natural feel in the hand. The hand kind of naturally finds its position. The jimping is good. It's not sharp really at all, but it is positive. It's both in the handle and it's kind of here at the base, so you're kind of able to kind of counterpose your pinky and your thumb. And there's even a little jimping here, which I suspect is meant to kind of fit into the meat of your hand. The sheath, I love and I hate this sheath. The things I like about this sheath are it is very versatile, right? You've got a lot of real estate you could attach different mounting systems to. You can do different things with it. It has a very positive lockup. It does rattle a little bit, but it's not crazy. Originally, this sheath came with, this is SOG's kind of proprietary UMS, Universal Mounting System. And the idea is that it attaches and then it lets you kind of attach at various angles. And what part of the problem with it is the way it's constructed is there's not like holes that it goes into, there's these grooves. So what happens is when you kind of go, it slides, it moves around, and then as you can see there, it just kind of pops out. So I have to admit, I played around with this. I tried using kind of Loctite, different things, and I wasn't really able to get it to stay put very well. So I ended up buying kind of a Tech Lock knockoff. I think I got 2 of these for like $10. And then once I put this on, it made it a very easy knife to carry. I kind of like the carry. It does ride fairly high on the belt, but the knife itself is fairly flat, and so it rides right up against the body fairly well. I also really like these clips because they're just dead easy to get on and off, and then they do lock. I could also easily draw the knife one-handed and then put it back one-handed. That big well, I don't even have to see where it is, and it goes in there. And you can see it's got a really nice kind of thumb ramp to release it. What do I like about this knife? Well, first of all, you know, it lives up to the marketing. It is a beast of a knife. It's a strong knife, full tang. You're probably not gonna break this knife very easily, which means you're probably gonna have this knife, you know, for the rest of your life. Now, whether or not it's kind of part of your prized knife collection, or it maybe goes into your kitchen box for camping, or it goes into your car as a knife, that's another question. I think the price point at $60 is okay. It's not a super strong value. There's definitely other things out there that are comparable, but there's nothing that's kind of quite in this exact form factor at that price point. I think especially since this is a newer knife, if the price comes down in the $50 range, it'll be an excellent value. It is 440C stainless, which is good because you can put a good edge on it and it's got good edge retention, but I do think it's kind of sacrificing toughness. The chimping on it, the machining on it is quite well done. It's integrated well into the polymer scales. It feels good in hand, it's very positive, although unlike, you know, some bushcrafting knives where you want to be able to kind of slide up and down on the handle and have multiple positions, this really is kind of a 1 or 2 hand position knife. With the tip, I do like a really strong tip. You know, I mean, I would really use this a lot for handyman type activities where I just need a very, very strong utility blade. I can pry with this, I can kind of dig with this, I can remove staples. There's all sorts of things that I would feel comfortable doing with this knife that I would not do with something with a finer tip. And the last thing I'll kind of talk about that I found when wood processing was I did appreciate this 1.5 inch thick blade because I was able to kind of easily kind of dismember and chop through 2-inch pieces of wood, which, you know, kind of seems like that's kind of the standard size you find in terms of deadfall around the forest. So the cons of this knife are, first of all, the sheath clip. You know, I feel like this is really a waste, and so you really have to kind of budget another $5 to $10 to get a decent clip for this sheath. Depending on your use, right? If you're calling this a bushcrafter, I really feel like it's the wrong metal. Yes, you have, like Joker does a whole series of bushcrafters using a Bowler N60 or 695, which is kind of like a little bit of a souped up version of the 440C stainless. But I've never had a Joker kind of pit, and I don't know if these are quite chips on here, but I've never had a Joker do this with the Bowler steel. So I kind of feel like this steel doesn't really hold up for a lot of bushcrafting type activities. If I was using this as a hunting knife, where I'm kind of just dismembering and skinning an animal, I think this would be a great knife. I think it would hold its edge for a long time. It's something that's easy to clean up. Another factor too is there's no 90-degree sharp edges either on the spine or on the pommel, so you can't use a ferro rod with this. I kind of tried it a number of different ways. I couldn't find anything. I guess I could take a file and kind of flatten this out and create a bit more of a sharp edge here, but you know, I kind of feel like if you're getting a bushcrafting knife out of the box, that's a minimum it should be able to do. Similarly, the blade itself, it's a flat grind blade, so I find with batoning, it doesn't really act like a great wedge. Like it doesn't kind of like a Scandi grind where it just kind of naturally just splits the wood apart. And that also kind of goes if you're like feather sticking or you're carving wood. The shavings, it doesn't carve into the wood nearly as easily as something with a kind of a bit more of an aggressive bevel to it, like maybe like a convex or like a Scandi grind would. What's my philosophy of use on this, to quote the great and powerful Nut and Fancy? SOG, definitely, they market this as a strong outdoor blade. Camp knife, hunting, bushcrafting. As far as my thoughts, as far as a bushcrafting blade, the blade geometry, I think, doesn't lend itself well for it. The stainless steel is kind of brittle. It kind of pits and mars fairly easily. And it being hard stainless, this would be hard to kind of clean up and sharpen in the field. It does have a broad tip, which if you're going to be doing kind of like, you know, kind of fine carving, you know, if you want to drill a hole or make a spoon or kind of small cuts, it's going to be more challenging. It lends itself better for like food prep or for skinning than it does for kind of bushcraft activities. Also, the other thing I'll say is using it to process wood. I think a good proper bushcraft knife tends to be a lot rounder. It fills up the hand more naturally, whereas this really is kind of more of a rectangle in hand, and so I get quite a hot spot right across the top of my palm that I can see doing some work, but if I'm going to sit there for an hour and baton or do other activities, I'm going to have blisters. So I would say this is not a good bushcrafting knife, but what I would say this would be an excellent camp knife. It'd be good for hunting. And then what I think this would be great for would be as a utility knife. I work around houses, handyman type of stuff, and this would be a great knife to carry with me or keep in my toolbox because I know that I can just thrash on this knife. I can pull staples. I can kind of hammer it through something if I need to. I can kind of use it as a hammer if I need to. Now, it comes down to it, would I buy or not buy this knife again? And I did some research, and as far as bushcrafting, more as kind of the standard in the cheap bushcrafter space, there's the, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, the Kangol, which, you know, I think is a little cheaper. I used it in comparison to my Garberg, and the Garberg is just hands down much better for processing wood, a much more comfortable knife. I think I paid like $70 for it. So when you kind of think this was 60 plus 5 for this, yeah, I would rather have the more carbon black all day long. So if this knife starts going down in price, if this was a $40 knife, I think this would be an amazing value. If it's a $50 knife, I think it would be a very good value. But at $60, kind of given its issues, I would not buy this again at $60, at the $60 price point. Anyway, if you like this video, please like it, share it, comment, do all those great things. Thank you very much.